If you're playing DFS or betting on the Super Bowl, you are in the right place. We literally have millions of dollars up for grabs on these DFS slates, and I'm here to help you win some of that money. And we'll do this through a simple process. Identify the best plays first, then the worst plays, some values, and then the rest. And we're starting with those best plays, and we begin with who I believe is probably the best play on the entire slate, and it is $6,400 George Kittle, who will be taking on a man-heavy Chiefs defense, and Kittle averages 22% more production against man-heavy defenses. And not to mention, all of the Kansas City linebackers rank outside the top 50 in coverage grades this year, and he'll see a lot of those guys. And he'll also see safety Mike Edwards downfield, and Edwards ranks 68th in coverage this year. So at just $6,400, he's honestly just in like the mid-range. He's all by himself. If you could see right here, he's the only guy in the $6,000 range. He's really nobody near him. $1,200 each way is the next spot to get to. He's really easy to get to. I think he's probably, if not the best captain on the slate as well. And when we're looking at the showdown slates, naturally I want these guys who could either score 2 touchdowns, which Kittle can, or have massive receiving upside for huge spike weeks, and that's what we see on a lot of winning slates for the showdowns. And this next best play kind of fits that mold as well, and he's also affordable. It's $7,600 Rashee Rice. He's right in this mid-range, the #1 wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, since week 12, he's earned 20% more targets than anybody else on the team, and that includes Travis Kelce, but this is going to be a tougher spot for him against the 49ers. Because the 49ers use cover 4 defense at the 3rd highest rate in the league, and Rice averages 30% fewer targets against cover 4. Now, I've taken Rashee Rice under 6.5 receptions. I think he could still have a good game and have 5 or 6 catches, but for DFS specifically, he looks like a much better play because he's only $7,600 and the ownership is not where it should be. Based on my tool right now, the DFS Blueprint, you can check it out down below and join thousands of other people currently using it. He's about 10% under owned, which on a slate like this, when there's so much money up top, you have to take advantage of that type of leverage. Now, just as a disclaimer, this is being recorded on Thursday, so some of that ownership might move, but I don't expect it to be drastic. Just check Patreon for the updates. Now, next up for the best plays, we're staying in this mid-range, getting towards the upper mid-range now, and it's $8,000 flat Isaiah Pacheco for Kansas City. He's at $8,000 flat, which is the flat price principle. People will go lower thinking that they're getting a discount, or higher up to the receivers here in Ayuk and Debo thinking they're getting a better player for a higher price. And look, this is a tough matchup for Pacheco on paper. In the regular season, the 49ers were a top 5 defense against the run and tackling, but in the postseason, they are giving up over 5 yards per carry to opposing backfields. But when I'm looking for a good flex play or a great captain, I want somebody who has that 20+ point upside and 2 touchdown upside, and Pacheco definitely does. The guy just had 24 touches in 2 out of 3 postseason games. They're leaning on the run, and he's getting a lot of red zone usage. Now, I prefer Kittle and Rashee Rice in that order when you're looking for captains or guys to squeeze in your lineup, but maybe you get all 3 of them and go with a balanced build. Pacheco would be my 3rd choice there. Next up is more of the obvious choice as we go to the best plays, and it's up top at Travis Kelce, $10,200. I have no idea how he's this close in price to Brock Purdy. Kelce has a much higher ceiling. Now, Kelce won't have the easiest matchup against the linebackers in the middle of the field of the 49ers, but there is a nice advantage here. And it's the fact that the 49ers do use zone defense a lot, and Kelce is the best Chiefs pass catcher against zone. He's experienced. He knows where to find the zone, sit down in it, and he earns over 25% more production against zone-heavy teams. I have Kelce over a half a touchdown scored in my props, and I think that would definitely help us get to a captain option here, but if you want to spend all that money, just getting him in your lineup. Out of the upper range options, the 4 guys above $10,000, and even the 6 guys above $8,000, so Ayuk up, Kelce is my favorite choice. Now, my second favorite choice in this range would be Patrick Mahomes, who's also not all that expensive relative to some other slates and other guys on this slate. And you can look at it right here. He's more than $1,000 cheaper than Christian McCaffrey, as he probably should be, but he's right there with Kelce, and he's somehow only $600 more than Brock Purdy. I think Mahomes should be at least $1,000 more than Purdy. He's projected to score or projected to throw 6 or 7 more attempts, depending on the books that you're looking at for pass attempts, than Brock Purdy. And on the year, we know he's thrown much more 40+ attempt games and has more rushing upside. He's also had his best postseason maybe ever right now. He has 5 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. He's scrambling fantastic. There was no Joe Thuney last game, and there's probably not going to be this game the best guard in the NFL, which is going to probably lead to even more scrambles for Mahomes. Now, there's going to be some ownership here, but believe it or not, it's not as high as it should be. He's probably about 5% under owned right now because some people are still going to one Brock Purdy. Now, next up, we want to take a look at the defenses here. I think both defenses are a great play. Naturally, when there's a public slate, so much more people playing because it's the Super Bowl. People at the Super Bowl party just telling other people to play some DFS and DraftKings. The defenses will go on their own. People will choose the position players next to them, like MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like a Jawan Jennings, maybe even the kickers, but I think the defenses are the best options here. If I had to choose one defense between the two, I'd choose the Chiefs. They're somehow similarly owned to the 49ers, even though they're playing better in the postseason, and they're $1,000 cheaper. And then I think both kickers are in play as well. I would actually lean Jake Moody because I think they're going to be settling for field goals more if it came to that on 4th downs. Andy Reid is basically going for every single 4th down. Shanahan's aggressive too, but he does settle a little bit more. So those are the best plays on the slate. And of course, it all matters on how you build your specific lineup. And we can get more into that on the GPP strategy show on Sunday morning for everybody on Patreon. Check it out, linked down below. But now let's get into the worst plays. And we'll start with Juwan Jennings, the wide receiver 3, and probably the 5th option in the offense for the 49ers. He lines up in the slot about 60% of the time, which means he'll see the starting slot cornerback for the Chiefs, Trent McDuffie. And McDuffie ranks top 10 in playoff coverage, allowing just 40 yards per game. And now here's the deal. Juwan Jennings is $4,000. We just talked about the defenses. I prefer them. I'd even prefer a kicker depending on the lineup that you're building, and some other guys that we'll talk about later who are actually cheaper than him. His player prop right now is set at 1.5 receptions. For $4,000, I'm not looking for a guy who's expected to get 1 to 2 catches. And I could say the same about his teammate. Maybe not catches, but just overall touches aren't really going to be there for Elijah Mitchell, because Mitchell comes in at $2,800, which in my opinion is too expensive. He didn't see a carry in the first playoff game. The second playoff game, he had 4 rushes for 7 yards. He found the end zone, but it was because Christian McCaffrey landed on his head and shoulder and did not return to the game for the final 4 carries. There's a decent chance McCaffrey sees all the backfield carries in this game for the 49ers between Juszczyk and also Elijah Mitchell, which means Mitchell is kind of useless at this price tag unless he scores another touchdown, which seems unlikely. And if you really think he's going to score a touchdown, just bet his anytime touchdown prop instead. Don't put him in your DFS lineups. Now, I brought up Kyle Juszczyk's name because he had 2 receptions in the last game and they were playing from behind, and I'm sure a lot of people at his cheap price tag are going to look at him. Now, he really doesn't see any carries, and even if he did, what's he going to get? A couple of yards? He only has like 4 or 5 games with carries this year, so you're really looking for a couple of catches and mostly a touchdown. And I get it. It's appealing at his price tag of just $800, but you can say that for the guys below him. If Jerick McKinnon plays, Richie James, you can just basically say, oh, but if they just find the end zone, and those guys are going to be lower owned, and they're half to a quarter of the price as Kyle Juszczyk. I took Juszczyk over a half a reception because I think that's a nice play, but I literally think if he gets that, it's going to be like, a 4 or 5 yard reception. That 1.5 fantasy points isn't doing anything for you. Now, this next one might make some people mad, but honestly, based on the overall narrative around Brock Purdy, I don't think it will. I think he's one of the worst plays on the DFS slate. Look, Purdy has 5 interceptable passes this postseason. It leads the entire postseason, and he's played in only 2 postseason games. He's had 4 dropped interceptions so far. And it really comes down to this for Purdy. I touched on it earlier, but his player prop is set at just 30 attempts right now, 20 completions. He's not expected to throw all that much in this game, and he's priced so close to some other guys that I just much rather have. Kelsey and Mahomes, I'd rather pay up for them, and the guys below him, especially well below him, like an Isaiah Pacheco, a Deebo Samuel, I'd rather have those guys. For the ownership that Purdy is currently coming in at, it's nothing crazy, but it's probably about 5 to 7% too high. For me right now, it's just an avoid. It's a price play, and it's just, hey, $10,000 flat. I think other people are going to get there, and I won't. And I could say the same thing about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, here's a big reason why. Look at this. Ian Rappaport tweets out that Jerick McKinnon, he's designated to return. He might actually return for this game. Now, if he plays, do we think he has a major impact? Maybe, maybe not. But more importantly, if he sees any snaps at all, it's likely going to be in obvious passing situations, which takes direct snaps away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is priced at $1,200. Jerick McKinnon just $200. It's not like I like Jerick McKinnon here. Maybe if you really want to take a stab at it and some positive reports come out, okay, I don't absolutely hate that at $200, but it's mostly about not going to Clyde Edwards-Helaire for $1,200. He's seen right now 4.6 opportunities per game this postseason. And now 71% of these opportunities have been carries. So he's getting like 2 or 3 carries a game, not a lot of targets in general, which is where his real upside is for something like DraftKings PPR formats. And as we discussed, those targets won't be there. The upside will be even less if McKinnon does play. So I'm not really there on Clyde Edwards-Helaire or his teammate Mecole Hardman, who every postseason game has seen less usage because he just hasn't been all that good. Fumbling the ball through the end zone, they just really don't want to go to him. You can see right here, he ran 19 routes in the first playoff game, then just 10, then just 1. He has 4 targets so far this entire postseason, but yeah, when he's running 1 route last week and now Kadarius Toney might come back, you're not going to Mecole Hardman. Hardman's $1,600, and we can scroll a little bit more, and like the only other guy who might even see a snap is Chris Conley. Chris Conley saw a couple of snaps in the divisional round because Deebo left. He ran like 15 routes, but with Deebo back in the conference championship, only ran 2 routes. You're not really going there. If you're going to do a $200 pump play on this entire slate while we're down here in this range, $200, I think your only real option is Jerick McKinnon if he does indeed suit up. Now, that said, I'm not advocating over the top for Jerick McKinnon, but if you wanted somebody at $200 exactly, I guess that's where I would go. Now, before we get into the values, I'd like to let you know about our partners for about 3 years now. A lot of you know about them, but it's Prize Picks, and it's a very simple game. Outside of DFS, you could also get some action on the more or less the over-unders for a lot of props, and they're running a promotion for the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes over a half a passing yard. So that's an obvious slap. That's an obvious win. You might as well just go ahead and take it because they want you on their platform, but hey, you get the free win. And I have been taking a ton of Prize Picks entries. You can see them all on Twitter, all in the free Discord. Been posting them basically everywhere. We have a video on the main Sal Vetri YouTube channel as well, breaking down 10 of my favorite plays and even more. You can see, I think right now I have in over $1,200 or $1,300, and it's going to be adding up throughout the rest of the week. on Prize Picks alone. So you can pair up that Mahomes prop with any of the ones you're seeing right now as I scroll through. If you just want to pause it and check it out, this is the platform that I'm taking a ton of props on for the Super Bowl. And not only can you get that Mahomes prop, but they'll also give you up to a free $100 to play with when you sign up with code SAL23 or you scan the QR code on the screen right now. So what that means is if you put in $20, they'll give you 20 right back, or if you want to put all the way into 100, you get $100 right back in credits to use on the site to win some real money. Use that code SAL23 or scan the QR code on the screen right now. So now we get into the values, and I should note that guys that we talked about earlier, like some of those defenses and like George Kittle, they also would double for this part of the video as well as really nice value options, but I'm just going to go for the cheaper values here is what we'll talk about. Those guys are the best plays on a slate for a reason, because of their price tag and their upside, aka their value. Now this man's been on the screen for long enough, and he's one of the values. It's Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's not the best play, he's not the worst play, but he is indeed a value at his price tag. He's used all over the field. The slot, the Y, the Z, that's the two outside receiver positions. He'll go into all those spots MVS, which means he'll have some beneficial matchups. And he runs his most routes against cover 3 and cover 4 defenses, which is exactly what the 49ers run the most. And not to mention, he just saw a season high in usage in the AFC Conference Championship, running 44 routes. So at $3,000, I like him. And we talked about another guy earlier. Juwan Jennings is $1,000 more. Not going to run as many routes as MVS. Has a lower receiving prop right now in the market as MVS. Similar reception prop at 1.5, but we know MVS is used much more downfield than Juwan Jennings, who's mostly a blocker for his team when everyone is healthy. So yes, this is a value play. $1,000 discount and a much better play for MVS. Somebody we can talk about on his team in Justin Watson. Not that great of a play. I'd rather have MVS, but when we're looking down here, we don't have much. Sky Moore's banged up. Who knows if he plays? Kadarius Toney's banged up. Who knows if he plays? We've already talked about Elijah Mitchell. We don't want. McCole Hardman. We don't want. So it's just kind of like what's left down here below $3,000. Justin Watson's at least a name to call out because he's still running routes. Now he lost routes to MVS. He does not perform well against these zone defenses this year. He struggles to earn targets. So I'd really just try and find the money for MVS or not even hang out in this range at all and just build a middle tier lineup. That's kind of the way that I'm going. There's a reason we haven't talked about McCaffrey yet. We'll get there. But maybe one guy who does open up some upside for you would be $1,800, a little bit less expensive than Justin Watson, and that's going to be Noah Gray. Now this one doesn't feel great either. It's Noah Gray, but he has been involved. In the postseason so far, he's averaging 15.3 routes run per game, and he's seen 1 target in the first game, 3 targets in the second game, and 5 targets against the Ravens. His usage has increased every game. The role has been nice. If this guy at his price tag finds the end zone, he's definitely going to be involved. But heck, he might have 2 or 3 catches and not even need the touchdown. So when I'm looking at this, the guys below $3,000 that stand out the most, I think it's actually Noah Gray. And now for our final stage of this video, the rest. The guys who don't fall into the best, the worst, or the values, they're just still there if you need to fill out your lineup. And there's some big names who fall into this category, like Deebo Samuel. He's taking on the Chiefs' #1 playoff secondary. But here's the deal. The Chiefs use cover 4 defense and man defense at a top 10 rate. And Deebo ranks 6th against cover 4 and well above average against man this year. I think Deebo to score a touchdown is appealing in this game, but overall, the reason why I didn't put him in the best category of the values is just the guys around him I'd rather have. I'd rather go down to the best plays on the slate, in my opinion, Kittle, Rice, and Pacheco, or go up to some of the other best plays in Kelsey and Mahomes. It makes it harder to get to this Deebo Samuel range overall, but I would prefer him to his teammate Brandon Ayuk, who's right here below him, and let's discuss Ayuk. Because he'll face L'Jarius Sneed for a part of this game. It's going to be hyped up, oh, L'Jarius Sneed versus Ayuk, and that is a great matchup. Ayuk's top 10 against man coverage, and Sneed is top 10 at defending overall this year in man coverage. But here's the thing. The Chiefs will only use man coverage for like 30 to 40% of this game, and Sneed doesn't shadow, so it's really going to be like 5 to 10 plays that'll guard Ayuk, which does give a nice advantage to Ayuk there, but the ways that they use Deebo Samuel on the ground, overall in the red zone usage, I like him a little bit more if they're going to be basically the same price point. They're just kind of both in this okay range. I did take Ayuk over 62.5 receiving yards. All right, now let's get to the guy who we haven't talked about, who a lot of people probably thought would be at the very worst in the best category values, maybe, in Christian McCaffrey. And look, here's the deal. Everything for McCaffrey looks good. He gets the Chiefs' bottom 5 run defense. They allow the 7th most yards before contact. And McCaffrey himself this year ranks #1 at breaking tackles, evaded tackles, which means he's going to pick up a lot of yards before and after contact. It is a great spot for him, which is exactly why I took his over 18.5 rushing yards in the player prop market. I actually took his under 5 receptions, and you can watch that video on the main channel if you want to see why. But look, here's the deal. One, he's obviously expensive at $12,000, but the other thing is he's over 70% owned, which in my projections in the DFS blueprint, link down below on Patreon right now, you can check it out, is about 5 to 10% too high. And when you have the most expensive player picking up that much more ownership than the other guys around him who are significantly cheaper, over $1,000, $2,000 cheaper, it's at least something to keep in mind or think about. Hey, maybe we don't play him. Because as of right now, he's not giving you positive leverage. If anything, he's giving you negative leverage, meaning making your lineup slightly worse, but of course that could change some. At the end of the day, the way that I'm seeing this slate right now is you kind of just start your lineups at Mahomes if you even want Mahomes. If not, you start to Matt Kelsey, and if not, from there, you just build a mid-range lineup of your Kittle, your Rice, your Pacheco, but then you'll probably have enough money, even if you say play Jake Moody or the 49ers defense, you're going to have enough money to get to Kelsey or Mahomes, and then you build your lineup from there. I think Kittle's a great captain. I think Rice is. I think Pacheco is. I think Kelsey is. All those best plays are also great captains. Now, one more guy to call out if we're looking at just the rest would be Richie James, who's seen some usage in the postseason, and it's only because he's cheap. That's the only reason I'm saying his name. He ran 10 routes, 5 routes, and 8 routes, as you can see here in the 3 postseason games. Only has 3 total targets, so a target per game. It's really like a touchdown or bust. He should see some special teams usage, which maybe gets him another opportunity to score a touchdown on a kickoff return. And again, the only reason he's being mentioned is because below $3,000 on this slate, as we've been over, there's basically nothing. We don't love Elijah Mitchell at all. Sky Moore is banged up. We don't have to talk about him too much. We don't even know if he's going to play with a knee injury. Kadarius Toney might return from a knee injury. Who knows his involvement? Jerick McKinnon might return from an injury, right? So there's not a lot down here. We talked about Justin Watson, Noah Gray. We don't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Kyle Juszczyk. After that, Richie James running 5 to 7 routes is like only the best thing you're going to get, probably below $1,000. I don't really like it, but it's at least worth mentioning for the rest category. So this is everything you need to know, and it's going to help you when you're building your DFS lineups and maybe getting in some player prop bets. And just a reminder to get that free Patrick Mahomes play on Prize Picks, and they'll give you that free bet up to $100 when you sign up with code SAL23. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below. Best of luck. Enjoy the Super Bowl, everybody, and we'll be back real soon with even more DFS content.